I am 69 years old, working 5 jobs at the same time to pay off my son's debts. But when I stood outside his penthouse door with a bowl of stew in my hands, I heard him laugh and say, "That old man is nothing but a useless loser. Just let him keep sending money." That was the moment I decided to expose everything. The bowl of stew in my hands was still warm. The scent of thyme and black pepper drifted through the air. This was Eleanor's recipe, my late wife's. I had been standing outside this penthouse door for 10 minutes. Lamar, my son, was talking on the phone inside. His voice echoed through the expensive oak door. He laughed loudly. It was a laugh filled with contempt. "Welcome back to Dad's real-life revenge. Grab a drink, some snacks, make yourself comfortable, and remember the people in these stories had every opportunity to do the right thing, they simply chose not to." Leave a comment with the number 1 so we can continue the story, and hit subscribe. You're going to enjoy this one. I set the bowl of stew down. My fingers trembled. Not because of the cold, and not because the tray was heavy, but because the truth was piercing, straight through my chest. My hands were covered in calluses. My skin was peeling from diesel fuel and cleaning chemicals. For the past 3 years I had believed he was struggling. I believed his company was on the verge of bankruptcy. I had scraped together every dollar from 5 different jobs. I skipped breakfast. I wore shoes with worn-out soles. All so I could send $4,000 to his bank account every month. But just look at this place. A penthouse, overlooking the entire city of Pittsburgh. Polished marble floors. Expensive artwork hanging on the walls. Lamar was wearing a luxurious silk shirt. He was drinking a bottle of wine that cost as much as my entire monthly paycheck from warehouse work. He was not in debt at all. He was simply draining me dry. He had turned a father's sacrifice into a joke for his friends. My composure did not disappear. It was simply condensing into a storm beneath the surface. My audience often asks me how I managed to endure it for so long. The answer is very simple. When you lose the wife who shared your life, you cling to your child like a final life preserver. I was blind, but that blindness ended at this very moment. My son truly believed I was too broken to fight back. He thought an old man whose joints cracked like rusty gears could do nothing. He was wrong. This revenge did not require noise. It required precision. I turned and walked away. The bowl of stew was left on the velvet-covered doorstep. My footsteps were quiet but steady. The elevator carried down a completely different man. The weak Herbert of yesterday died in that penthouse. Now there was only a Herbert preparing to collect every debt, both in money and in honor. 4:15 in the morning. The alarm on my old Casio watch went off. The sound repeated itself mercilessly. I sat up immediately. My knees cracked like rusty gears. Every part of my body ached. My back was stiff after less than 4 hours of sleep, but I had no time to complain. The storm that had begun the night before at the penthouse was still flowing through my veins. It kept me more alert than any cup of strong coffee ever could. I stepped out of my narrow bed. The empty house echoed with the sound of wind whistling through the window cracks. I looked into the mirror. A 69-year-old man stared back at me, his eyes sunken and his wrinkles deeply etched. This was the portrait of the man Lamar called a useless failure. I put on the faded blue uniform of my first job, morning shift security guard, at the downtown parking garage. The job started at 5 o'clock and ended at 9. 4 hours of walking across freezing concrete. My legs ached constantly, but my mind was sharper than ever. I was adding everything up. The moment my security shift ended, I rushed to the electrical supply store. I worked there as a salesperson and stock handler until 1 in the afternoon. Heavy coils of cable, buckets of paint weighing down my shoulders. The smell of grease and metal dust clung to my hands. My palms were covered with calluses. Large patches of skin had peeled away. Lamar had never once asked about these injuries. The only thing he ever asked was when the money would arrive in his account. At 2 in the afternoon, I reported to the warehouse of a large supermarket. My third job lasted 4 hours. I stacked towering boxes of merchandise onto shelves. My back felt as though it would snap in half. The coffee I had brewed that morning tasted flat and stale by then, but I drank it anyway. I needed energy. I needed money. But from this point forward, that money would no longer be for him. 5 jobs. Security guard. Delivery driver on an old motorcycle in the late afternoon. Employee at the electrical supply store. Warehouse stalker. And finally, freelance repair work at night, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. Lamar thought I did all of this because I owed him a luxurious life. He thought I was a loyal mule born to pull the plow until I dropped dead. The Mercedes he leased smelled of fresh leather. The Rolex on his wrist sparkled beneath the lights. Every bit of it had been purchased with my sweat and blood. His betrayal was a mortal wound. But it was also the cure for the foolishness that had blinded me for the past 3 years. 11 o'clock at night. I finished my final shift. I did not go home. My old motorcycle turned toward the city's public library instead. Pittsburgh at night was cold enough to cut through bone. I tightened my grip on the handlebars. Inside my jacket pocket was a list of companies Lamar had mentioned over the years. This was the calm at the center of the storm. I was not going to his penthouse to slap him across the face. I was going to find out exactly how he had drained me dry. I would expose his true face, piece by piece, until he had nowhere left to hide. I walked into the library carrying my worn backpack. The computer system containing corporate records appeared before me. I typed my son's name into the search bar. The results made my heart nearly stop. A familiar name appeared under the list of debt partners. The trap Lamar had built was not aimed only at me. It also involved someone I had sworn to protect with my life. The computer screen cast a faint blue glow. It shone directly into my tired eyes. The words on the screen felt like blades cutting into them. I rubbed my eyes twice to make sure I was not mistaken. Eleanor's Craft Supply LLC. That was my wife's old company. She had passed away 11 years ago. That small craft store had been the work of her entire life. It was a place filled with the scent of pine wood, fresh ribbons, and Eleanor's laughter. And now her name appeared on fraudulent records. Lamar had used that very company to create fake debts. He had used the name of his deceased mother as a tool for fraud. He created false losses. The purpose was to force me to pour the last drops of my sweat into his bottomless pit. Rage surged inside my chest. It was not a loud fire. It was cold lava. My body might have been destroyed by 5 exhausting jobs, but Eleanor's honor was my red line. Lamar had crossed it. He had insulted the memory of the mother who gave him life. I clenched my calloused hands. My joints cracked loudly in the silence of the late-night library. The smell of old paper and dust suddenly felt suffocating. I stared at the dates on the documents. Every time Lamar called me in tears asking for money because his mother's company was supposedly in trouble, a large sum of money had been transferred overseas. That money was not used to save Eleanor's legacy. It was used to feed my son's endless greed. He had deceived me by exploiting the pain of a father who had lost his wife. I sat silently in the darkness of the library until the manager came over to announce closing time. I stood up. The old key hanging around my neck suddenly felt heavy. It rested against my chest like a reminder. It was the only inheritance Eleanor had left me before she passed away. I had never known what it unlocked. I wore it simply as an act of faith, but today I understood that I could no longer stand by and watch. The truth needed a witness, and I would be the one to uncover it. I walked out of the library. The Pittsburgh night wind struck my face. I pulled out my old phone. I searched for a contact I had not called in years. Leland Pfizer, a former financial fraud investigator. The only person who could help me untangle the maze of numbers Lamar had built. I knew this phone call would officially ignite the war. But I was not afraid. I pressed the call button. The ringing echoed through the late night. When the man on the other end answered, I said only one short sentence. I need your help bringing down a snake. I arranged to meet him at 2 in the morning at a small roadside diner. I climbed onto my motorcycle and twisted the throttle, but I did not know that the moment I left a black car began following me from behind. Its headlights remained off in the darkness. It seemed Lamar had sensed that something was different about this useless old failure. The small roadside diner was thick with cigarette smoke and the smell of burnt grease. An old ceiling fan rattled overhead. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. Leland Pfizer sat in a shadowy corner, his eyes fixed on the file I had just handed him. He was a former financial fraud investigator with 30 years of experience. Leland's face remained cold and expressionless. The more he studied the numbers, the deeper his brow furrowed. I silently took a sip of stale coffee that had long since gone cold. Its bitter taste stuck in my throat. The old key around my neck still pressed against my chest. It felt like a compass reminding me to maintain the calm at the center of a storm. Leland adjusted his glasses and looked up at me. Lamar is playing a very dangerous game. His voice dropped lower. The money you've been sending him was never used to pay off debts. Leland turned page after page of the documents, tapping a line of figures with his finger. Your money paid for Rolex watches. It paid for the Mercedes Lamar leases. Your son created shell companies to launder the money you earned through sweat and hard labor. He turned your wages from security work and warehouse shifts into luxury accessories he could wear. Pain squeezed my heart, but my composure remained intact. I asked Leland what Lamar's real objective was. Leland looked at me with sympathy in his eyes. Then he revealed another shocking truth. Lamar is pretending to be successful in front of the Whitfield family. He wants to marry their daughter. He needs the image of a wealthy, self-made young businessman. You are the secret foundation of that lie. He hides the fact that his father works 5 exhausting manual labor jobs. He only needs your money to maintain the illusion of status. I tightened my grip around the glass. Veins bulged across my calloused hands. Lamar was not simply deceiving me. He was trampling on every value Eleanor and I had raised him to believe in. He called me a failure, yet he was living off the last drops of my blood. Leland suddenly glanced toward the diner's front window and lowered his voice. There's a black car parked across the street. It's been there since the moment you walked in. Its headlights were dark. I turned and looked through the diner's fogged glass. My heart skipped a beat. Lamar had begun moving faster than I expected. Leland gathered the documents, immediately stuffing everything into his worn leather briefcase. Then he leaned close and whispered a warning that sent a chill down my spine. Lamar doesn't just want your money anymore. He tapped the file. These records suggest he's preparing something far more ruthless. His eyes locked onto mine. He wants to take away the only thing you still have left. Leland paused. The diner suddenly felt colder. He wants to make sure you stay silent forever. Leland's warning echoed in my mind as I stepped out of the diner. The black car across the street started its engine immediately. It followed me silently through the fog-covered streets of Pittsburgh. I twisted the throttle of my old motorcycle. The engine roared like the heartbeat of a furious man. The next day, Lamar's ruthless trap finally revealed itself. It was not aimed at my nearly empty bank account. It was aimed at my freedom. I discovered that Lamar had been secretly building a guardianship case against me. He wanted to have me legally declared mentally incompetent. One afternoon, just after finishing my shift at the electrical supply store, 2 strangers appeared. They wore expensive suits and introduced themselves as social workers conducting a routine evaluation. But their probing eyes and carefully crafted questions did not fool me. They asked about my work schedule. They asked whether I forgot things. In reality, they were employees of a private investigation firm hired by Lamar. He had prepared the scheme with remarkable precision. A short video showing me collapsing from exhaustion at the supermarket warehouse the previous week had been uploaded online. The clip quickly went viral, attracting cruel comments from strangers. Lamar had used that very video as key evidence for the court. He argued that I was suffering from severe cognitive decline. He described me as a paranoid old man working himself into the ground because of age-related dementia. The legal trap was tightening around me. If the court granted Lamar guardianship, he would gain complete control over my life. He could place me in a remote psychiatric nursing facility. He would legally manage everything that belonged to me while concealing his fraudulent debts. My voice would be taken away. I would become a ghost no one cared about. My hand tightened around the old key hanging from my neck. Its sharp edge dug painfully into my skin. Lamar believed he had cornered me. He believed an old man working 5 manual labor jobs would eventually collapse under the weight of money and lawyers. He was wrong. My composure had not disappeared. It was transforming into a cold, calculated strategy. I stood before the mirror in my dark room. The trap was nearly perfect. State law seemed to be on his side. But my son had forgotten one thing. He thought he knew everything about me. Yet he had never known the secret of the key I had worn around my neck for the past 11 years without ever removing it. It was time to open the door Eleanor had prepared for me. A door that contained something capable of destroying Lamar's entire scheme. But it was also something that would expose me to a terrifying new risk if I failed to act in time. I stood before the rusted steel door of storage unit lot 47B. The place sat on the edge of the city, surrounded by weeds and darkness. A light rain began tapping against the metal roof overhead. Tonight was cold, but my chest burned with heat. I reached up to my neck and removed the chain holding the old key. The rusted lock groaned heavily before finally clicking open. I pushed the door and stepped inside. The smell of dust and dry pine wood filled my nose. I switched on my flashlight. Its beam swept across the vast interior of the storage unit. There were no piles of gold or stacks of cash inside. Instead, the space was filled with wooden crates containing ceramic artworks and exclusive design manuscripts created by Eleanor. Everything had been carefully sealed. At the very top sat a small blue metal box. I walked over and opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter from Eleanor. My wife's elegant handwriting appeared before me after 11 years. She wrote that she had secretly purchased this storage property and accumulated valuable artistic assets long before she became ill. Eleanor had understood Lamar's greedy and selfish nature since he was a child. She had foreseen the day he would turn his back on his family. 11 years ago, she built a fortress to protect me. The collection now carried a market value of $4.8 million. It was enough wealth for me to live comfortably for generations. But more importantly, it was the ultimate weapon against Lamar's guardianship trap. I sank into an old wooden chair inside the storage unit. Hot tears rolled down my thin, weathered cheeks. Eleanor had never truly left. Even after returning to dust, she was still protecting me. My calloused hands gently traced the letter. The calm within me was now strengthened by something far greater. Lamar wanted to turn me into a penniless old man declared mentally unstable. He wanted to take away my freedom for his own benefit. But he had no idea that the father he despised possessed enormous economic power. If you've stayed with this story until this point, then it has probably stirred some emotions in you. Please help us with one small and quick favor: like and subscribe. Leave a comment with the number 5 so I know you've made it this far, and share your prediction for how the story will end to see whether you're right. Many people watch without doing that, but it costs you nothing and means a great deal to us. I placed the letter and the key inside my jacket pocket. Before leaving, I took one last look at storage unit lot 47B. I knew exactly what I had to do next. This fortune could never be allowed to fall into Lamar's hands. But if I revealed it now, Lamar's legal trap would immediately move to freeze it. I needed a sharp ally. Someone capable of turning this hidden wealth into a fatal arrow aimed directly at my son's ambitions. I pulled out my phone. Then I called a person Lamar would never expect, a woman feared throughout Pittsburgh's legal circles. A lawyer known for hunting down those who exploit and abuse the elderly. Belinda Phelps's office occupied the top floor of an old building. Unlike the polished luxury of Lamar's penthouse, this place was filled with towering shelves of law books and the gentle scent of chamomile tea. Belinda was one of the leading experts in elder abuse litigation. She studied me through a pair of metal-framed glasses with sharp, observant eyes. I placed Eleanor's letter and the ownership documents for storage unit lot 47B on her desk. My calmness filled the room. Belinda reviewed every page carefully. Her expression softened as she examined the audit figures showing assets valued at $4.8 million. She looked up and offered a cold but respectful smile. "This is armor," she said. "Armor that cannot easily be pierced." Then her expression hardened. "But if we're going to defeat Lamar's guardianship trap, we'll need a stronger strike." I nodded. My decision had already been made. I instructed Belinda to transfer every asset from storage unit lot 47B and all ownership rights connected to Eleanor's estate into an irrevocable trust. The sole beneficiary would be Chandler, my young granddaughter, and Lamar's daughter. My son had abandoned her in pursuit of social status with the wealthy Whitfield family. I would protect Chandler the same way Eleanor had protected me. Lamar would never be able to touch a single dollar of that estate. Whether he won or lost, the guardianship case would no longer matter. Belinda stopped writing and studied me carefully. She asked whether I wanted the trust disclosed in court immediately to eliminate Lamar's legal standing. I slowly shook my head. I raised a calloused finger to my lips. "Leave a few openings," I said. "Let it look sloppy. I need him confident enough to write his own sentence." That was my strategy. I wanted Lamar to believe he was winning. I wanted him to think this 69-year-old man was panicking and making mistakes in managing his finances. His arrogance would push him to accelerate the guardianship case. He would gather media attention, witnesses, and every connection he had through the billionaire Whitfield family in an effort to corner me. The more confident he became, the more likely he would expose the hidden misconduct behind the shell company operating under Eleanor's name. Without realizing it, he would tighten the noose around his own neck. Belinda smiled. It was the smile of a lawyer preparing for battle. She turned toward her computer and began drafting the highest levels of confidentiality protection for the trust. That night, I returned to my empty house. I did not turn on the lights. I sat alone in the darkness, waiting for the storm to arrive. The following morning, a message appeared on my old phone. It was not from Lamar. It was a warning from someone inside the leadership of Whitfield Industries, the billionaire family Lamar was desperately trying to marry into. The sender had uncovered a shocking secret. A secret Lamar was hiding in preparation for Saturday night's gala. A secret powerful enough to overturn my entire counterattack if I failed to expose it first. The message on my phone screen gave me pause. It had come from Cassius Whitfield, the billionaire patriarch of the Whitfield family. He had quietly begun investigating the background of his future son-in-law after receiving several anonymous envelopes of information from Leyland Pfizer. It turned out that Lamar had been working frantically to bribe the people around me. He wanted them to serve as false witnesses in court and testify that I had completely lost my mind. But my son had underestimated the power of decency. The next morning, I rode my bicycle to the small church where Eleanor and I had attended services every week. Pastor Robert came outside to greet me with a warm smile. He took my calloused hand in his. Then he told me that Lamar had visited him carrying a thick stack of cash. He wanted the pastor to sign a statement claiming that I frequently suffered panic attacks and rambled incoherently inside the church. Pastor Robert had flatly refused. He had thrown Lamar out of his office, and he told me he would gladly testify before any judge regarding my sound state of mind. From there, I walked to the neighboring house where Viola, my neighbor of 40 years, was watering her flowers. The moment she saw me, she set down her watering can. Anger flashed across her face. She explained that Lamar had hired people to secretly record me in hopes of catching me wandering aimlessly or dropping things. She had personally chased them away with a broom. More importantly, she possessed security camera footage proving exactly what they had been attempting to do. Even Marsden, the warehouse manager at the supermarket where I worked my third job, stood beside me. He called to inform me that Lamar had sent an ultimatum threatening legal action against the supermarket unless they provided fabricated medical records about my condition. Marsden told me he had already delivered the original surveillance footage of the day I collapsed to Attorney Belinda. He refused to allow a hard-working man to be slandered. The network of witnesses Lamar had worked so hard to build had abandoned him. The decent people around me had formed a wall protecting my reputation. The calm storm within me was now supported by the unshakable justice of ordinary people, and Lamar remained alone inside his own game without realizing it. Late that evening, my phone rang again. This time, it was a direct call from billionaire Cassius Whitfield. His voice was deep and authoritative through the receiver. "I've realized I've been sheltering a snake," he said. "Cassius invited me to attend the Whitfield Corporation Gala on Saturday evening at the Omni William Penn Hotel. He wanted me to confront Lamar personally in front of Pittsburgh's elite. I accepted. After ending the call, I stood by the window and stared into the darkness outside. The storm had gathered enough strength. Now it was time for landfall. But I knew Lamar would not surrender easily. He had already discovered my connection to Attorney Belinda, and he was preparing one final devastating move inside the hotel lobby before the gala began, a move designed to prevent me from ever reaching the stage. The crystal chandeliers in the lobby of the Omni William Penn Hotel glowed brilliantly. Pittsburgh's elite mingled throughout the hall in expensive evening attire, laughing and chatting. Lamar stood at the center of it all. He wore a tailored tuxedo. A glass of champagne rested in his hand as he smiled toward the daughter of the Whitfield family. His expression radiated confidence. He believed the guardianship trap had succeeded. He believed that by now I was locked away in some psychiatric facility on the outskirts of town. Then the sound of my dress shoes striking the marble floor shattered that confidence. I walked into the grand lobby. I was not wearing an expensive suit. I was wearing my faded blue security guard uniform. The same uniform I had worn while working 14-hour days for the past 3 years. My calloused hands hung at my sides. The calm of a storm surrounded my thin frame. Lamar saw me. The color immediately drained from his face. He started signaling for security to stop me. But Cassius Whitfield stepped forward from behind me. With a simple gesture, he ordered the security team to stand down. He nodded to me and escorted me directly to the main stage. Whispers spread throughout the ballroom. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the old man, wearing a worn security uniform. I approached the podium. I picked up the microphone. My voice was steady, calm, and measured like a weather report. I began with 5 shocking truths. Truth number 1, my name is Herbert and I am Lamar's father. Truth number 2, my son is not self-made. He used a shell company operating under the name of his deceased mother, Eleanor, to create fraudulent debts. Truth number 3, I worked 5 exhausting jobs from 4 in the morning until late at night so I could send him $4,000 every month. Truth number 4, he used that money to buy Rolex watches and lease the Mercedes parked outside this hotel. Truth number 5, when his deception was discovered, he hired investigators posing as professionals to build a false case and have me committed so he could obtain guardianship over me. The ballroom fell completely silent. Every whisper disappeared. Then the massive screen behind me lit up. Attorney Belinda had uploaded the audit reports, the evidence collected by Viola, and the footage provided by Marsden. Lamar's true face was exposed under the brightest possible light. The Whitfield daughter immediately removed her engagement ring and threw it directly at him. Cassis Whitfield stepped to the microphone. In front of everyone present, he announced the cancellation of all business arrangements and publicly disowned his future son-in-law. Lamar collapsed to his knees in the middle of the ballroom. He stared at me with a mixture of panic and hatred. 2 federal agents entered through the main doors. They walked directly toward him, carrying polished handcuffs. My son had lost everything. I stepped down from the stage. The intensity of the evening had finally reached its end. I had reclaimed Eleanor's honor. I had reclaimed my freedom. Leaving the hotel, I welcomed the cool night air. But just as I wheeled my old motorcycle out of the parking lot, an attorney representing the trust came running toward me. His face was pale with alarm. In his hand was an emergency document that had just arrived from the county courthouse. He handed it to me. The papers revealed something chilling. Before his arrest, Lamar had managed to sign away another form of power, a power entirely separate from money, a power that threatened to pull my granddaughter Chandler into a new and dangerous storm, one I had never anticipated. I took the document from the attorney's hand beneath the dim yellow streetlights. Before being placed in handcuffs, Lamar had attempted to transfer all of his enormous personal debts into his daughter's name. He wanted Chandler to bear the consequences of his greed. But he had miscalculated one crucial move. The irrevocable trust that attorney Belinda and I had established had been activated 2 hours earlier. Every asset from storage unit lot 47B, valued at $4.8 million, was already beyond the reach of creditors and legal claims. It had become a shield protecting Chandler. The court completely rejected Lamar's attempt to transfer the debts because of their reckless and unlawful nature. My granddaughter was safe. My son could no longer harm anyone else. At last, everything was over. The storm had passed. Pittsburgh returned to its familiar rhythm. I decided to retire from 4 of my jobs. I kept only one. I continued working as a morning security guard at the downtown parking garage. Not because I needed the money, but because I enjoyed watching the city wake up at 4:15 in the morning. I enjoyed the silence and the clean air of dawn. My hands no longer had to lift heavy boxes. The skin slowly softened, but the calluses remained. They were reminders of a difficult chapter that I had survived. The old key still rested around my neck. Now it was no longer the burden of a secret. It had become a symbol of the love and protection Eleanor had left behind for me. The truth does not need defending. It only needs to be witnessed. And I remained standing long enough to witness it. My story is an expensive lesson about trust, motherhood, and fatherhood. We often excuse our children's mistakes because of unconditional love. But sometimes, unconditional protection becomes the very poison that feeds greed and selfishness. Love with a clear mind and an alert heart. Learn to protect yourself and your family's legacy before it is too late. Do not allow your kindness to become a tool for someone else's exploitation, even if that person is family. Financial and legal independence are among the strongest protections for the people you truly love. Thank you for joining Dad's Real Life Revenge. Don't forget to share your story in the comments and subscribe so you won't miss the next hard-earned lesson. See you in the next video. I walked into the security office and poured myself a cup of warm tea. Its gentle aroma rose with the steam. I looked out at the people hurrying along the streets below. For the first time in a very long time, I felt light, peaceful, and free.